delighted to see so many of you interested in this kind of thing, because when I started out, I was like Ranger Red. He said, you got to learn from the mistakes of others. You just won't live long enough to make them all yourself. Well, I've made most of them, and I've learned from it, and that's been kind of an interesting experience. And John Froschauer is going to run that little video camera, and I'm going to show pictures on interpretation. And I guess if we are ready, are you ready, John?
Yeah.
This recreation consortium over there is one of the highlights of many of us year after year, and it's a good opportunity to see something different, to have an intensive look at a national park, which is probably Harry Truman best came out one night, his wife, and said he was throwing their love letters on the fire. Bess said, yes, and Harry said, well, I best think of posterity. And she said, I have, and throw the rest of them on the fire. I want to start out with a little sign I wrote back when I first started here in Nashville in the 60s. I thought if we put welcome at the top in large print, we'd have fewer of them shotgunned. And in fact, there's still a few that are around that haven't been. As you get further into it, you can see in fine print that bleachers are protected. Our business in parks is preservation, and this is one of the great opportunities to come to a place like this. And here's the namesake of our park here. We call this Long Hunter. And they said these guys had a long rifle, and they did. They were usually made out of Tennessee iron, in what they call the Kentucky rifle style. It shot a round ball about a mile with deadly accuracy, sort of like some of the sniper's guns that the Germans used in World War II. We know that the fellows carried a long knife, which they used for skinning, because mostly what they were doing was shooting animals and skinning the hides off and selling the hides for a large fee, because it was a cold winter in Europe, in Paris and London. They needed all the buffalo robes and bear skins they could get. The bad news is that they wasted the rest of the meat. Mostly they just left it to rot, and that caused a great conflict between the long hunters and the Native American people. Come right in. And further to the side you sit, the less you see, so come on down front. I'm not going to pass the hat. The long hunters also, the wife said, stayed out a long time. So that's, I guess, why they all got to be known as long hunters. This fellow's crossing Battleford on the buffalo. They followed buffalo trails. The Indians followed the buffalo. The pioneer hunters followed the Indians. And that's why so many of our roads are crooked in Tennessee. They sort of go all along from Salt Lake to Salt Lake. Our emphasis today will be on what we call interpretation. Someone said that interpretation is a translation. It's a translation of, in some cases, languages. Languages are sets of perceptions, or in a sense, what defines us as a culture more than anything else is the way we look at the reality of it. When you translate something of value and something of meaning, and the meaning of nature and culture from the different aspects of the local area are often in need of being lifted up to people so they can more readily understand them and appreciate it. So it involves a great deal more than just information. If you stop and ask a traffic cop down here, he'll tell you which way to go, sometimes right to jail. But if he tells you in such a way that you look forward to going, that's interpretation. And so that's something we want to lift up from Shakespeare, who said that I want you to see sermons and stones and books and brooks and good in everything. And it's out there. We just have to look for it and point it up. And a lot of times people will point it up for you, and that's good. And you can be silent because nature is speaking to them. And it was Liberty Hyde Bailey who wrote that in his little book around the turn of the century at Cornell. Now, in the parks, everything is protected. It's all interconnected. William Blake said, thou canst not pluck a flower without troubling a star. And so this incredible ecological environmental context is really such a big picture that most people go through life kind of like the mule with blinders on, seeing only a little bit of it. But it's your job to take the blinders off and to take them by the hand or by the mind's eye and help them to discover the interconnectedness of all things. And I want to make sure that projector is focused. I guess it's focusing pretty good. If not, really. I started in 1955 here. The manager hired me to help with the nature trails in Shelby Forest, which was north of Memphis. And I just assumed the trails needed work, and they did. They built these trails in a park system which had highly erodible soil, and they, what I didn't realize is that the Garden Club of America got a national award for coming up and promulgating this trail system, which the Civilian Conservation Corps in many of our state parks created trails when they were built in the 30s. This is not one of the CCC parks, but some of them they did not, and we had to add them later. The Garden Club ladies were very distraught that the trails were neglected after 15 years or so from the time they were built, and they got their award, so they were on the park manager's back to do better. And so he really hired me to protect it from the Garden Club ladies. And I found to my joy later on, these ladies really cared about the woods, and they really cared about stuff. And they did it for the love of it, and that's what you call an amateur. And an amateur isn't particularly paid for it, but they do it for the joy of it. When I got into this business, I started picking up arrowheads and rocks, had a pretty good collection, gave them to the park office, and worked my way through high school, actually, and college, and then graduate school. I went to Southwestern at Memphis, now Rhodes, and then on to Tulane for graduate study. But I was involved in a national science grant as a kind of staff photographer. I bought a Leica camera from a pawn shop when I was about 18. And if you don't have a good camera, go get one. They're out there, and a good pair of binoculars. You need some basic stuff, and that gave me a leg up. I fell in with a bunch of Archaeological and Geological Society members in Memphis, where I was going to school, and the Bird Club took me in. I met some of their lecturers, and learned a great deal from people who knew about this stuff, the Memphis Astronomical Society and all that jazz. That's me on the far right over there with the patch on, the old park patch. I must have been about 18 or 19 when I was working at Teal Fuller Park, and we were uncovering the Native American Temple Mound there in the village. And the fellow with the wheelbarrow was a full-blood Choctaw from Mississippi, and he spoke Choctaw, and I learned from his grandmother some pretty old-fashioned Mississippi Choctaw, such as Halito, which means howdy, or Tullahoma in Tennessee, which means Chulahoma, red fox, Oklahoma, red people country. So a lot of interesting stuff you can learn directly from the people. I learned actually how to make arrowheads by trial and error. After about 6 months of beating on your thumb, you learn how to hit the stone and study air. I'm going to cut this off because I don't believe it. It's my boss so well. You can wait. I think I know what he wants out of me. He wants me to be a partner tomorrow. The arrowhead making, the Indians picked up by watching me. I was chipping one day, and the Indians were watching how to do it down there. And the reporter came along, and he wrote me up in the paper. It was picked up later in Argus magazine. My cousin read about it while he was on a boat in the South Pacific. But a college boy was taught it was hired to teach the Indians to make arrowheads. That's not exactly the way it was, but anyway, that was kind of fun. And they taught me how to make blowguns, how to make baskets out of fishing cane, and how to speak their language, which is a very beautiful language. So I had the pleasure later on of taking Principal Chief Noah Powell, a full-blood Cherokee from North Carolina, to see his ancestral Cherokee town, the little village of Tunsey, as it was called, and its capital next door to it, which is really adjacent, which they later called Chota, the sacred city of refuge. And he's looking at the body of a Cherokee burial. In the old days, they would put pull the body's legs back up in the umbilical position like you were born, and put you back in Mother Earth's womb. And they thought you might get hungry on the way to Happy Hunting Ground, so they put that's actually part of a dog. A dog in those days was a delicacy, sort of like turkey with us, or pigs. and they didn't have pigs. Over his shoulder is the coffin of a Christian Cherokee. And in that grave, he's buried with his head to the east, was found a pair of glasses and a bone-handled knife given to this chief of Gunnestotai by King George in London in about 1732. And it was all found by their archaeologists. This was going under the TVA telephone dam. So all of these sites were being excavated. You can see the outline of hearths and places where the women would cook, and also pits where they would bury their corn. If they put corn down in a hole in the ground, the soil fungus in the ground would keep the corn mud from molding. And it was like putting it in an ice block, so it was a very good way to do it. Well, you can shut that blind over there, which is hitting the screen. That helped a little bit. Thank you so much. This was my Taposhikitana Shipi Oskia Somba, Lakana Home Ochimale, Chukalisa Falai Memphis, which is to say in Choctaw, this is the old lady that taught me how to make baskets by splitting cane with a sharp knife and then dyeing them different colors and plaiting them into baskets. And this technique of quartering the cane I've never seen anywhere except her do it. And she did not speak English, although she understood English. The people had treated her so poorly. If you can imagine, in the 50s in Mississippi, the blacks had it bad, but the Indians had it even worse. And that boy with the wheelbarrow actually committed suicide when he was 16. And another one, 12 years old, did the same thing because they had no jobs, no hope, and nothing but a hard life. So the Mississippi Choctaw I learned to be friendly with because they were wonderful people. This is a Cherokee guy, a fellow who actually interprets Cherokee. I believe his ancestral tribal mixture is Western Indians. His name Hopi, I forgot, this is our red clay interpreter. He's showing these boys how the sign language of the Indians on the drum could communicate through long distances. The low sounds of the drum are used in Africa as well, but the drum was much more than that. It was used in to great effect in ceremonial purposes. We find that Indians interpreting Indian stuff are far more convincing than the alternative. Here it is at Fort Loudon. This is where the first British fort west of the Appalachian Mountains in 1756 was constructed. The group that reconstructed that actually got people to donate a pole at a time to the palisade, and that's how they finally put it together. All of this had to be excavated completely by our archaeologist, Dr. Carl Cuthbert, and TVA then reconstructed the fort in exactly the same configuration, about 50 feet in elevation high. That was nice of them. That was about $1 million job. However, they had, in order to do that, they had to bulldoze the Indians' remains away in order to get filled there, and that included the Sequoia's mother, who's probably under there somewhere now. But anyway, it's interesting to see some of the pioneer cooking. This is one of the, everybody loves an eating meeting, and everybody loves a cooking demonstration because there's always some goodies, there's some goodies at the end of it, even if you have to cook them over the fire. And especially if you're roasting buffalo in a pit, charcoal pit fire, there's nothing, they say, more delicious than bison meat. It's low in cholesterol, about 3%. This is an animal that can run 30 miles an hour for a week if they want to. They have incredible stamina. They can turn on a dime with that massive head and their weight over the front legs. And many an Indian and pony has found we can't do that. And so this is an animal they almost rubbed out with Buffalo Bill and the shooters who decided to get rid of the Indians' meat source. They got down to about 25 buffalo in Yellowstone Park and a small number in an island in Salt Lake, and that was it. And the Bronx Zoo finally recruited 19 of these and started breeding and taking them back. And today, now many of the Western Indian tribes have their own herd, and the largest herd, I believe, is Ted Turner's Bison Ranch. So if you stop at one of his burgerias, you can get a bison burger there, and I recommend it. Those were land between the lakes, where we used to have the recreation consortium until TVA went too upscale for us. Tennessee has some remarkable places to interpret. If any of you stick around here, if you're from Tennessee or if you want to stay around, like John is from New York and one of our other naturalists is also, and we're glad to have him. This is the birthplace of Davy Crockett. This is Nolichucky Falls, which is located in eastern Tennessee. And this waterfall is an interesting place. His brothers were building a raft and having a good time at this plant here. He heard them. He ran out and waded out to get on the raft with them. Only he slipped. He was about to go over the falls and he drowned, and a neighbor heard him holler and saved him. And so his little birthplace cabin is in the woods just behind there. But I often think about, would there have been an Alamo, would there have been a Texas? Well, maybe not, who knows. But interesting stories like this across the state of many of our men and women. Two of those were Grace and Alvin York. Gracie and Alvin lived in the White House on the right. After he got some money from the film, they built a bigger house. The film about Sergeant York and his capturing 128 of the enemy. Actually captured 132. He shot 28 dead. And the rest of the German battalion gave up before his accuracy. And they were particular war anyway. It was toward the end of it in the Argonne Forest. This little red mill is what Sergeant York retired to and ran till he was up in years. He used to go up in those hills behind the house and pray. At first he was a conscientious objector. He didn't want to shoot anybody. But it's amazing now that the Nature Conservancy has helped us to buy, and the Conservation Fund, most of the several thousand acres that lay between Hall Mall and Sergeant York's house and Picket Forest, which is a remarkable achievement. Just across the ridge from our greatest World War I war hero is the home of our birthplace log cabin of the world's greatest World War II peacemaker. This is Cordell Hull, whose father was a logger. He floated down to Nashville on a log raft. Those days you just chain the trees together that you wanted to float to market, and in the spring floods they would take them down to Nashville, sell them, and then they could either go walk back home or take the train if they had enough money. When he saw the state capitol from the Cumberland River log raft that he was riding, he said, I'd like to work there someday. And he did. He became a congressman, a senator, and finally Secretary of State. And finally, at the conclusion of World War II, when he had gotten all the Latin American nations as our allies, he said, we should have the United Nations so we can stay out of World War III. And so far, we haven't had World War III, although we're getting close to the edge of it. And this United Nations idea is a good idea. In my opinion, we need to get behind and not let it fall. He received the Nobel Peace Gold Medal for his effort on behalf of starting the United Nations, and was regarded as the person who started it by President Roosevelt. We have a number of exhibits in our parks which are really rich. One of the richest collections that was donated to us by this little old man blowing the flute up there was Pop Lenore. He was 90 when I shot this picture. He looks younger than me, but he was a remarkable guy, and he collected this out of the Norris Reservoir area before TVA flooded the valley. And he knew the Acuffs. He knew Roy and Roy's brother, and also one of their cousins. And they flooded out. Their home went underwater, but they got their fiddle and came to Nashville and did pretty good for country boys. So if some of you like music and you want to interpret through music, that's a good idea, and even art. So whatever you have, or through antiquities, if you know some of this cultural material, here is a fishing boat used by the mussel fishermen. I don't mean the kind of that kind of mussels. I mean the kind of mussels where they clam shut like an oyster. And those brails, or little BBs, would be dredged along the bottom of the river, the Tennessee River. And the clams on the bottom of the river would be laying there, opening and closing, filtering out the food that they ate. And these BBs would tickle them, and they'd clam shut. And then they just pull them up out of the water, throw them into the mussel boat, They would break them up and send them to Japan as cultured pearls. And today, that's still a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's really amazing. We have the finest pearl mussel in the world. Not only that, but we have about 300 species of mussels, more than any other place in the world, and about 100 species of darters. So this is a good indication that this is over on the Tennessee River in a place called Pilot Knob, where General Nathan Bedford Forrest, that wizard of guerrilla warfare in the Confederacy, used his cavalry to capture 4 Union gunboats. And how did he do that? Well, he did it in the dark of night and caught them unawares. That's what they've been doing to us over there in Iraq. So that's enough said. This business of interpretation doesn't require a lot of elaborate and expensive stuff. If you've got some leaves, that's how my dad got me started. He took me out in the woods and showed me the different kind of leaves. He showed me the grapevines where the squirrels were using, because he said, see son, how the toenails have worn the bark off of this side of the grapevine. They go up to that tree and not to this way. And he would go, and this little squirrel would come down and say, oh, who's that? And splat, Daddy would have squirrels and dumplings for supper. And so that's where I learned a lot of good stuff. And you can learn that from other people like that in the woods. You just go and ask them. These folks from Memphis are out here, and the kids are looking at this stuff like I did for the first time. I grew up in Memphis, in a big city, and a lot of folks that are cut off from nature really do need somebody to help show them just a few things and get them started. And you could be the person that does that. And you can make a difference. Rocks, leaves, whatever you got. This is what we're up against right now. The internet, IMAX movies, video machines, exercise machines. This is actually in Fall Creek Falls Park. So you can have your choice. You can hang out in there, or you can go hit the nature trails. Well, the nature trails, we like to say, are there for free, or there at least for the easiest part of it. And so we started about 1970 a whole series of naturalist workshops. Every year we would bring our people together and start training them. We got Dr. Portman from Vanderbilt and some other people to help us. And we sent these people out to our parks to be summer naturalists like I was doing. And the first nature trail they let me build was because the bookkeeper's daughter fell off the edge of the cliff here and broke her collarbone. And so they decided, oh, is that what a naturalist is good for? Well, we'll let him do what he says he's supposed to do. So they did. And this Standing Stone is now a trail which has been very well used. It's laid down the contour in such a way as to minimize the impact of the land. The only problem is after a while, some of you are lucky to wind up with summer jobs, you may need to help redo some of these trails. You may need to be out there like I was when I first hired on as kind of a spotter, a troubleshooter for what the parks may not have time to get out of their pickup trucks and discover out in the woods like this bunch is doing here at the Fall Creek Falls. Somebody threw some beer cans out in the parking lot. They washed into a gutter, and Froshower, being the archaeologist he is, excavated the gutter and found the reason that the water was turned and going down the trail. And it literally washed out thousands of dollars worth of stuff there because of that oversight in the drain. And that's often the case. Well, when you lead a conducted tour, a hike, be sure that you kind of keep them moving and stop from time to time for them to catch their breath and look at something interesting. Make sure you speak loud enough so they can hear. This is Bob Fulcher at Picket Forest. He's showing them a beautiful valley which was about to be logged. And he wouldn't shut up about it. He kept on talking about that until finally the loggers had to quit. The Forestry Division decided they didn't want the heat. And so he was hired by the park, and the forestry controlled the trees. They had a right to log it, but that shows what you can do. So don't be afraid to get involved in controversial issues. Conservation is inherently controversial. You're always having to say, wait a minute, you may have to take the honey from the bear, or you may have to take the trees from the loggers who could make some money out of that, but they're better off left where people can enjoy them. In fact, that valley is the best second growth forest in the whole Cumberlands, and I believe it's going to stay that way. I hope so. Sometimes a hay wagon tour is a lot of fun. And if you haven't got a mule, well, a tractor will do, or a Jeep, or whatever. And sometimes, of course, we have to conduct people in their own automobiles on short trips. Beware of the traffic hazards. To have people put their lights on like you would a funeral, and sometimes there are flashes when you stop, and you have to remind people not to step out in traffic. Just this basic stuff, because you are responsible when you're leaving the trip. This is Richard Hilton, another of our great naturalists that worked for us for 20 years or so. He is standing up on a bluff. He's being heard. He's speaking loudly to the back of the audience, and he's showing them something they can see from where he is. Sometimes if you're at the front of the line, the people at the back of the line won't pick up much of what you're putting out. So you have to kind of get yourself an vantage point where you can be heard, and that's very important. This fellow, Charlie Norval, calls turkeys, and he can make those turkeys do a waltz out there or whatever he wants. He's good. And the fellow behind him is David Haggard, who's also a naturalist from Wilford Lake at that time. And these are the kind of things which we use in our training techniques. Here's another one of our naturalists at Radnor Lake, Randy Hedgepad. The speaker didn't show up that night for the audible program, so he took everybody on an impromptu night owl prowl and was talking and showing them about whatever else. And so you have to be prepared sometimes for plan B if the plan A doesn't go through. This is Marty Silver, another one of our legendary naturalists, been with us about 25 years, and he loves kids and he's good with them. As you can see, he's grabbed this one by the neck, and the kid loves it. And so sometimes, the kids are a wormy little bunch. You have to use a few techniques to get their attention. And once you got their attention, then you can see by those big possum grins, they're going right with it. And he's a master storyteller. Also, sometimes you have to take the parks to the people. Here's a garden club program, and they're all getting to see a barred owl up close and personal. Sometimes we use vultures and have had them fly back and forth across the audience. You can imagine the anguish and anxiety of a buzzard flying over. You know what buzzards do. They do it a big way, what other birds all do. And so anyway, this is a wonderful experience. You can see the owls getting kind of red-eyed from all that attention. But this is the sort of technique which our naturalist David Haggard, who is now our West Tennessee naturalist, does wonderfully well with even our American bald eagle, our national symbol. And that's a very impressive bird, and you really got to watch it because they have such talon strength. If you don't watch it, they grab you by the head and sink those talons right through your brain. You don't want to take the chance of one of them getting loose, so these have to be handled by people that know what they're doing. But, when Blake said, when you see an eagle, you see a piece of genius. Lift up your eyes, because eagles have about 8-power binocular vision. They can focus the fovea of the eye to create that optical intensity. They have the ability to fly, almost a mile high or more. They mate in the air. They mate for life. They are interesting birds, and they primarily feed on dead fish if they can find one, or whatever else out there. I've seen them at Wilford Lake when the lake froze over, where a rabbit track suddenly ended, and the eagle tracks and the prints of the feathers in the snow showed you that the rabbit was a pretty good substitute for fish. John Froschauer is good at taking people on bird trips. He does a lot of birding right here, and I'm going to turn the second half of what we're doing over to John, and he's going to take it from there. And I'll move along so we'll have a little more time. You may have in your community people who know birds better than you do, which I've always found is very helpful. This is the Tennessee Ornithological Society field trips at Radnor. Every year they lend a few experienced bird watchers to help us take folks out every Wednesday during the fall migratory season. And some of these folks are up in years. And by the way, I would say most folks aren't aware of it. Bird watching is the most popular outdoor sport. It's more popular than all the rest of the activities, sporting activities included, all put together. So there are more people that love birds and love to discover them, and they love to see them, and birds are everywhere. They took a lesson out of the dinosaurs notebook. Don't get so big for your britches. Get little, get light, get busy. And so these little feathered birds multiplied. We have about 300 species we see over in West Tennessee or Ropa. You could bring birds to your place by putting down a little food for them. Here, we overdid it. We got more Canada geese than we could deal with. And geese can be messy, as we know. But it does distract you from that awful road cut that the T-Dot did up in Cold Lake years ago. It's about healed up now. Remember too that night flowers are just as fascinating, but you got to handle those with care. Some of the bats do carry rabies. They may not get it, but you might. So you can attract bats almost always by a light that attracts bugs, which attracts bats. It also attracts frogs, which attract copperheads. So you want to turn the light off at night if it's near where you might be stepping out. Pioneer blacksmithing demonstrations are something kids almost never see, as you can see by their attention here at Old Stone Fort. Quilting making is something that the neighborhood enjoyed up at Rome Mountain Park here with our naturalist Jennifer Wilson. And cave exploring. Tennessee has 8,000 caves, probably more than any other state, including Kentucky, as well as waterfalls. And this is at Cedars and Lebanon. Getting back into these dark holes requires a little bit of care and preparation. If you're conducting cave trips, you need hard hats, you need a couple of 3 sources of light per person, so that if something fails, they still can get out of there without banging their brains out. And so but it's worth it. Here at Dunbar Cave, we have regularly conducted tours back into the cave where Rory Acuff had a natural amphitheater for his country music shows, and we have kids fishing, as you can see here, and they're enjoying the ambiance. Let's see if I can get this thing going. There it goes. What else is going the wrong way? There we go. Well, you can see that is a big car. But that's good resistance. Proud of that. It's been a big sound. So, and by the way, if you cook them in a pressure cooker, they say they're just about hard to tell the difference here. They're delicious. Well, at this park, we have a handicap trail, which is great for, you can see the grin on that little girl is just as real as it is on any kid who gets out and sees stuff. And the man in the wheelchair on the left has been our park friend here for many years. Jim Miller. And is it Jim?
Yeah, Jim's Miller.
Yeah, James. He's still active with us, and there's a reason you have these little bags out here that say friends of the park. I guess they're out there according to good luck. Well, one of the things you need to show kids, especially if they're handicapped, is leaflets 3. You better let it be. Now, when you say leaflets 3. I hold up 3 fingers and I say, you can see the middle one is the longest one. And there are a lot of leaflets 3 out there, but poison ivy, the long leaf is the middle, and you can see it there dramatically. And that's something that can help them from getting an itchy aftertaste from their park visit. It's not a matter of roughing it out here, it's a matter of what you know to help you to smooth it. We have a prickly pear. You don't want to go barefooted over that. That's our native Tennessee cactus with the little sedum, a little succulent in the springtime. We call mountain lettuce, which is edible. It doesn't have a lot of flavor. And so is the fruit of the cactus, which makes a delicious jelly once you get past the thorns. So you may want to have a flower wall. Your park or your place may have some rare plants. These are members of some of our department staff people, some of the university people, and everybody's looking at the flowers. Here at this park, our ranger is showing you a patch of Tennessee coneflower, which is a real rarity. It was almost rubbed out, and now they're breeding it back, propagating it, and it's expanding. We brought a large number of acres here in Middle Tennessee where this sort of rare flower grows in cedar glades. And of course, almost every park has a hickory tree in Tennessee, where you can look up at all its gold. And the poet Leon Tate said, it's strange how many pass by and leave the gold heaped under this autumn tree and never realize how beautiful the world can be. And we may find remnants of some of the ancient chestnuts. This is the largest we know of at Standing Stone. And this tree we're now crossbreeding, back crossing in the hope of developing a blight-resistant chestnut. And we're very close to getting that. So some of my best friends are nuts, and they believe this could be done. We have a chestnut display at Standing Stone talking about the different back crosses. And some of them are making it, as you can see by the plantation, and some of them have not. So that's a good demonstration of the power of the blight. It's a real problem. Our hemlock trees are subject now to a similar foreign critter that's coming in. Trailside interpretation, recycling. All of these things are things that you can lift up in the park. Here's a sign talking about the geomorphology of Fall Creek Gorge. The gulfs up there are known by the local people as a place where something is not. And it's a headward erosion of the King Creek here that's caused these great rocks and blocks to split off. And sometimes exhibits like this can help kids, especially if they're hands-on, as you can see, and made with little folks in mind. Helpful for them to see stuff and more helpful for them to touch stuff. And if you don't succeed in your interpretation, this is what likely can happen to our parks and our precious wild creatures, including ourselves. The Frenchman Honoré de Balzac wrote that people tend to destroy what they don't understand. And in our Tilden, Freeman Tilden was a wonderful writer. The Park Service decided if they took him around and showed him the parks, he'd write something nice about the parks, and he did. He wrote a book on our national parks. He wrote another one on our state parks. And then finally, he wrote a little Bible called Interpreting Our Heritage. And if any of you are serious about getting into naturalist or interpretive work, you got to get a copy of that, because he talks about the principles of interpretation. What was talked about without enthusiasm will not be heard. And that if people know about a place and care about it, then they'll help you protect it. And so this is what basically we lift up. And I would hope I'm not going to be caught now. I'm dragging this show out too long, but it's very important that we realize there's only one thing worse than sitting through a bad presentation, and that's giving one. And the way you do that is to not be prepared. So I go to the books, and just to do a slideshow like this takes me a day or two to pull up the slides, to try to find what I've got, and I can't always find them because slides, unlike PowerPoints, are often discreetly tucked under something else. This is one of our park visitor centers in Fort Loudon. We hope to have more of these. I stumbled early on with that old Leica onto the idea of taking pictures as a means of taking the parks to the people. As I've said, if some of you are good at singing, if you're good at art, if you're good at anything, use your skills. You may find, as I have skills and experience in photography. I have a long collection of thousands of slides. Finding them is the hard part sometimes, to do what you want. I've got to do another one tomorrow on archaeology over at Lebanon, and I've got most of that found, but not all. When I take pictures, I try to use as much as I can good photographic composition. This is an old civilian conservation corps structure at Cedars, Lebanon. It's a beautiful stone building. I tell it like it is because I've got the ice machine not cropped out of the picture, but I'm lucky that day to find a wonderful chestnut fence or cedar fence and these gold of the sugar maple trees to give it a little bit of more interest. It probably would have been even more interesting to have maybe some kids or a couple walking through it. When you take pictures, try to get close. The fellow kneeling behind didn't bother to get a picture. This fellow wasn't close enough. He didn't make the cut. This fellow became the best naturalist we had in the class of 1970. He's now president of the South Cumberland Land Trust and is saving 1,100 acres of land, and just done a wonderful job. Sam McGee. This guy became our TDOT staff photographer for the last 40 years. Has been one of the great contributors to the Conservationist magazine, George Bunnell. They're photographing a little red newt, a little red F down there. With my old Leica, I had to use a ruler and ultra lenses to get this close. But if you look carefully, you can see the head of a little straight pin or scale. So that is a matchstick size mushroom, like house matches. And so getting close is very important. Sometimes getting the context of something is important too, like this gal making friends with the Dobson fly, or the Dobson fly making friends with her. It looks like he's having a point of conversation at this point. But this is the kind of threshold experience which kids needed. This gal went on to get a job with the Fish and Wildlife Service after she made friends with this bug. I'm not sure the bug had any influence, but it certainly didn't help. I'll probably never get another example of a click beetle and a plum cuculio kissing each other to see what they really are. You know, bugs have a cute sense of smell, but they met up on my finger. And click beetles have this wonderful ability to pop their neck back, and it literally bounces them several inches away out of danger. And it's quite a surprise when you hand one of those to a kid, believe me. It's usually, There's some practicality in bugs. Bugs are everywhere. They're the most common form of animal life. And spiders are even more so. They're probably the most ancient idea, with 8 legs that came out of the ocean. And some of them have some very potent venom. This is the brown recluse spindle spider, which is found all over Tennessee, especially here in Middle Tennessee. And they don't ever tell you, but if you put ice on the bite, it dissolves the poison. And you need to mention that to anybody that you might take on a conducting trip. Especially when they are staying in the bark cabins, because these are in the attic of just about every house in Middle Tennessee. Now, we only have the rattlesnakes and copperheads here in Tennessee to bother with. We do have water moccasins that are mostly found in the big, deep rivers of the west part of the state. This is a pygmy rattlesnake, and this is a tiny little snake, about 1.5 feet long. But you can see the eye, you can see the nose, and then you see the heat sensor, the pit viper, which is what they use to smell mice running by. They don't smell them, they feel them, and they strike in that direction. So when you're walking in the woods, tell people to watch where they put their hands and feet. If you put your foot down too close to a snake's head, you'll bruise your heel, as the good book declares. So you got to watch it. Those are just practical things. I've been in the woods most of my life. The only time I ever got snake bit was when I was handling a copperhead carelessly. And I had been handling it before carefully, and they didn't bite. But snakes are wonderful for interpretation. I can see the lady on the front that had a squeamish reaction. Most people do. We are squeamish about what we don't know about, especially about things which have stuck in our religious Bible, for example, about the Garden of Eden story and the serpent. But this indigo snake here is a beautiful creature. It goes into a hole, cleans out the whole nest of rats, and where the tomcat has to wait till one comes out at a time if they come out. And if you've read that T-shirt while I'm talking, you can see this is from Standing Stone, where we have a naturalist rally. And one of the great things we did this past year was get out in the creeks and look for aquatic life. And there's a lot of life in there, and the creek can tell you how healthy it is by the bugs and by the count of how many caddisfly larvae or whatever you may kick up out there, and also by the number of rare fishes that you find, like the little rainbow darter, this red-headed gal that's found up at Standing Stone. This is one of the hundreds or so species which are sort of like the canaries of the waters of Tennessee. They indicate how pristine and clean our waters still are. And almost every park has rocks. Here in this area, the fossils are fabulous. A magnifying glass with the edge of a penny shows you the scale of a little sow bug, which lived 300 million years ago under the Mississippian Ocean. It covered this area here with limestone. Behind it are the brachiopods, which is so typical of this Ordovician and Silurian limestone as well here. And beneath, above that, a layer of Pennsylvania sandstone was laid down in the mountains to the east of us, and is still there. Some of that rock must have washed from the Ozarks, because there is a piece in the center of pink rosy quartz, which is colored by the mineral titanium, and that comes only from deep volcanic area like the diamond mining country of Arkansas. And at that time, the oceans apparently washed this way and laid down massive deposits of this Devonian sandstone. This picture here of Falling Water Falls shows about 150 feet exposure of this sandstone cliff. To be able to read sermons in stones and books in brooks takes only a little geological insight, and you can start showing people a tree fern fossil like this cycad up here near Fall Creek Falls. And this is how I got started, just like this little boy who's one of my nephews, picking out rocks. And everybody thought I was nuts. I had about 4,000 of these primary fossils when I was in high school, and that precipitated me into the naturalist field. This little boy's got some ammonites or snails, and they're actually from right here on the Richard Priest Lake shore. Be sure, if you can, to try to help children have that moment of, oh boy, or uh-oh, or my, whatever they say, that threshold experience of discovery. This little girl is seeing a yellow thornitary warbler for the first time, a little wild canary, and she had never even heard of such a thing. When I was her age, I saw cedar waxwings out my 5th grade window. The teacher pointed them out. In those days, schools had windows, and that was nice. And that was my threshold experience. Maybe that's what helped me to get into the naturalist business. Might help you, and maybe someday you'll have some warm fuzzies you can take around and show kids what they're about. We have a lot of different parks across the state. We have 54 parks. We have about 70 natural areas. We just added a new one last week. Governor Bredesen dedicated the walls of Jericho down on the Alabama state line, and we're seeing more of these places than ever. While we're out there, remember, most people go to the woods for different reasons, and I want you to enjoy them as well. Take time to park and recreate, and take thought, though, to realize that this is an endangered earth, and that we have one cosmic instant in our lives to teach people maybe to give a hoot. And if you can teach them to give a hoot, if you learn a few bird whistles, they'll remember that more than anything else you say and do for them, believe me, because that's all everybody ever remembers me for, is giving a hoot. But I want to recommend that you take a careful look at your parks or your university programs or wherever you are. Keep a critical eye out, because from now on, what we do or what we don't do is going to make a profound difference on how long we can keep doing it. And all of our parks, right now we have a new administration that's been, Governor Bredesen announced on Earth Day that we were going to add green power to all our parks where it was available, and we're doing it. So we're trying to save energy, we're trying to redesign our buildings, add more insulation, we're trying to do more best management practices to save energy, and if you see things that are needed, speak up. Do what Dr. Whitworth did the other night at the Park Strategic Planning meeting when he spoke up, and let's see if I can read. I'd like to thank Parks for great employees, a great system, good video, and great meeting. Paul Whitworth said we should be taking a leadership role on regional planning. We should work with local jurisdictions to protect lands for the future. And I'm sure you're going to get the attachment, because he's going to tell you more about that. And that's good. Paul, I appreciate you speaking up. Many professions hold up in the ivory towers of the universities, and it's safe there. But when you really care, you've got to get out and go for